Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford, joined by my partner in crime, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field to continue previewing, as we did on our last show, the NFC Wildcard Playoff. It'll be coming up Sunday. It's a 3:30 Central Time kickoff from Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. Packers against the Eagles. Probably the best place to start here, Wes, is the injury update with both teams, because Jalen Hurts, the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback, is back in practice on a limited basis, but all reports are he is on his way to getting out of concussion protocol. The Eagles even released one of their backup quarterbacks.
Ian Book,
the former Notre Dame quarterback, which is obviously a sign that they expect everything to go to full clearance for Jalen Hurts by the time Sunday's game rolls around. On the Packers side of things, Jordan Love practicing, but on a limited basis. His elbow is still sore from that injury on Sunday against the Bears. He has the feeling back in his hand and all that. It's not about gripping the football as it was, but the initial injury that led to all the numbness in the hand, the banging of the elbow is sore. So he's still trying to work through that. And obviously the Packers are hoping that maybe by the end of the week, he could be a full participant in practice and getting closer to full health.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing was, too, I mean, we only saw the stretching. At the time in which we're shooting this, we haven't seen him throw. I will have that privilege of going out to practice to see what the throws look like. I'm sure I will take a video, and we'll have the NFL Network news desk sending me a DM asking me if they can use it, because everybody's going to be concentrated on how he's throwing the football. But,
right.
The fact of the matter is that, we were talking with Bo Melton, a number of guys in the locker room on Wednesday, and as Bo said, he's like, listen, he's going to be out there. We've taken so many reps with him. We've taken all these things. The main thing is just how Jordan feels going into game day. The pieces around him will be ready for this thing. So, but certainly this is the way this thing works. I mean, Edgerrin Cooper talked about it too at his locker. You're not going to find, even guys that aren't on the injury report, you're not going to find anybody that's feeling great on January 9th. I mean, these guys have been through some battles here for the last 4.5 months. Yeah. So for Jordan and his sake, we got to see what the downfield passing game looks like, what the accuracy looks like. But, I mean, he's a gamer, and he's tough, and he'll be out there on Sunday.
Yeah, he's certainly done his share of playing through injuries so far this season, which is not something he necessarily had to deal with last year in his first year as a starter.
Is that funny?
The knee injury from week 1, which he missed a couple games, but then, wasn't really all the way back when he was back on the field. And then the groin injury, which then he also had to try to play through. And then he never really got healthy until after the bye week, when we saw his season start to take off and start to resemble the Jordan Love we saw at the end of last season.
I got to go back and make Lauren Stone, now Lauren Anderson, our wonderful colleague out there. She was the one I think I put on that, or maybe it was Nicole Tim. I did that project last year looking at all the starting quarterbacks in the league that started all 17 games that were not on the injury report, and there was only 4 of them. One of them was Dak Prescott. We know how his season went. And then obviously Jordan was another one of them, and fortunately he's been out there all year, but he's had to battle through some things as well.
Yeah, well, on the defensive side, as far as injuries go, the Packers getting a little bit of good news. Quay Walker, Evan Williams, Walker with the ankle, Williams with the quad injury. Both of those guys have missed the last 3 games of the regular season. They were back on the practice field for the first time since those injuries, both on a limited basis, but trending toward potentially being available on Sunday. And those are 2 guys, basically full-time starters. Williams wasn't a full-time starter at the beginning of the season, but essentially as the season went along, both of those guys full-time starters, and the Packers would obviously love to have them back.
Well, and you're going to need all your inside linebackers for this one. You would imagine the Packers will probably play a fair amount of base, just because of the threat not only of Barkley, but also with Jalen Hurts and being able to contain their running game and some of the short yardage stuff. So, yeah, Quay Walker's a huge part of this. I think Isaiah McDuffie has a big role to play. Eric Wilson potentially could as well. But at the end of the day, Mike, you and I, everybody wants to see Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper on the field together. That type of speed, that type of athleticism, being able to cover those 53 yards sideline to sideline. There aren't a lot of teams that can do that. And for one reason or another, injuries-wise, they haven't been able to see that combination a lot this season. Also the inexperience of Cooper early on. But where Cooper's at right now and the progression he's made, I mean, the more 56s on the field, the more 7s on the field, I think the Packers defense, in terms of especially the speed of it, definitely increases.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zane Anderson, the safety, he has not yet returned to practice. He is still in concussion protocol. So if the Packers can get Evan Williams back, we know Green Bay doesn't have Jair Alexander, but if you get Williams back, you at least get back to that nickel secondary that is the preferred group when you don't have Alexander, which would be McKinney and Williams in the back end, Javon Bullard playing the slot, and then Nixon and Valentine playing the outside cornerbacks. And then you have guys like, whether it's Corey Ballentine or Eric Stokes, guys like that, if you want to go to 6 defensive backs at some point. That may not be something we see, as you just mentioned, because the Packers may be playing more base defense with regard to the running threat of both Saquon Barkley and quarterback Jalen Hurts. We broke down a lot of different aspects of the Philadelphia Eagles on our last show. Was there anything you felt that we missed or that you think is worth pointing out here before we get into the keys to victory for Green Bay?
I'm going to be a little self-serving here. Obviously, I wrote a story this morning on hackers.com about, to use an old Ketchman phrase, looking at Christian Watson's injury.
Yeah.
And the fallout from that, the emotional impact of that, the on-field impact of that. And it was great. I mean, a lot of guys talking about this in the locker room afterwards on Wednesday. Had a long conversation with Bo Melton about it. And I really like something Bo said at the end of it. And obviously, these guys are playing for Christian, and certainly they want to be able to step up in his absence and, leadership-wise, performance-wise. They've been in this spot before. They want to do it again. But I thought it was really interesting what Bo said in a question I had asked him later on in the interview about, everybody talks about how deep they are, but just how tight-knit that group is. And as he said, I mean, you got to remember when Dobbs and Watson were drafted, and then they added Reed and Wicks the following year. For 2.5 years, they heard about how young they are, how inexperienced they are, how, these guys, they're not going to be able to do it. And they've continually had that chip on their shoulder and overcome those types of things. Certainly, they've gone through some different stuff this year as well. There were drops. There was the issue there early in the season with Romeo Dobbs and then him not being available. Certainly you look at Christian Watson and his injury, it is a huge, huge hit to take right on the cusp of the playoffs. But This room, by and large, how close it is and how battle-tested it is, they feel like this is a great opportunity for them now. They have everybody from Jaden Reed at the top to the guys right at, they're going to be filling in these spots with some of the opportunities lower on the depth chart. Each guy, to a man, feels like they owe something to Watson. They owe something to this offense to step up their game. And I'll tell you this, too. It didn't make its way into the story because there's only so many words that can be written, but Jaden Reed is very hungry to kind of change the narrative with himself as well. Great start. Fantastic start against Philadelphia. Came up big for Green Bay during the first half of the season. It's been a little bit more of a slog in the second half. He understands his role to play in this as well. Yeah. And they're going up against the number 1 ranked pass defense in the National Football League. They're going up against the number 1 ranked defense by 20 yards per game, 25 yards per game.
Right.
This is a significant test, but Green Bay is not backing down from this. And I will close this point by something that Malik Heath said. And it doesn't matter who's on the field for Green Bay, who's ever lined up in front of them, you are not going to be able to stand in front of us. They feel like they have the explosivity within this offense to still make those plays, even without number 9 available.
I tell you can't say enough about the culture that has been built in the wide receiver room in Green Bay, because it is a bunch of guys that are competing for playing time, competing for snaps and opportunities and targets and everything like that. But quite frankly, the culture in that room is so impressive, and I think it goes back to, even my early days with Packers.com, and I'm talking about back in like 2008, 9, and 10, when the group is, Donald Driver and Greg Jennings and James Jones, and Jordy Nelson joins the group, and then a few years later, Randall Cobb joins the group, and then a couple years after that, Devontae Adams joins the group, and the culture in that room, and the coaches right now, Jason Vrabel, Ryan Mahaffey, they deserve a lot of credit. But it's also about what was built in that room over the years and has been passed along and doesn't really seem to have ever been disrupted even as the personnel has changed, it's just the torch continues to be passed in terms of the standard that's being set, how everybody interacts with one another. They understand everybody wants to get their catches and their yards and their touchdowns and their paychecks, but those individual numbers is not what it's all about. And that wide receiver room in Green Bay, I think is you can't ask for anything better in terms of the culture.
No, and Romeo and Christian have good heads on their shoulders. I mean, if they would have come in without any of that knowledge whatsoever, I think Green Bay would have been fine. But I go back to 2022, and so much about that season was lost. But having the opportunity to work with Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard that year, I mean, I remember Rome even talking about his interactions with Sammy Watkins, who was only here for a short time.
Right.
But a guy that was a former number 4 overall pick that had done it at a high level, was on the tail end of his career, but kind of showing those young guys how this thing works and how to carry yourself as a professional. That's a huge, huge thing. And Green Bay, we've talked so much about the depth all season long and guys not getting their opportunities, guys like Bo Melton and Malik Heath having to be patient just to get on the field, let alone get a target.
Right.
Well, now this is the chance. And Bo did it last year in Minnesota. He did it in Dallas. You look at, these guys who have stepped up when they haven't had Christian Watson in the past. Green Bay needs all of it, because as much as this game, in my opinion, as we slide into keys to victory, is about running the football well, you have to be able to keep them honest with the passing game, and all 4 or 5 guys that'll be up in this one are going to have a hand in it.
Yeah. Well, one other thought, just in terms of something I heard in the locker room on Wednesday after practice that I really liked, and hearing it from Jordan Love, who is answering all these questions about his elbow and how does he feel, and, are you cutting it loose or not, et cetera, et cetera. But he's asked about the playoff experience of last year, not only for himself, but for a lot of these guys who were in the playoffs for the first time last year, just like he was. And I thought what I heard from Jordan Love was to me the right mental balance, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, in that, yes, what these guys did in the playoffs last year provides a bit of confidence that you can, that you've been in this situation, you know how to perform, you can get it done. The moment's not too big for you, right? But in the same breath, Jordan Love says, but we can't live on what we did last year against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
This is about going out there and having to do it again, and I felt like, I feels like mentally, for everything that's going on with regard to the injuries with the quarterback and with Christian Watson and Jair Alexander being out now and all of that stuff that is swirling around this team, and the huge challenge that you're facing in the Eagles with the number 1 ranked defense, the number 1 running back, all of this stuff. It feels to me like mentally, whatever happens on Sunday, I think mentally this Packers team is in the right place.
Yeah.
And it was good to hear that. I think that stems from the way Matt LaFleur leads this team, but also the way the locker room leaders lead this team when you're talking about guys like Jordan Love and Elton Jenkins and Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs and those types of guys. I don't know what's going to happen on Sunday, Wes, and we'll talk about what the Packers need to do to win the game. But the Packers are not going out there intimidated, but they're also not going out there, in any sort of overconfident way because, we were the 7 seed last year and we knocked off the 2 seed and blew them out of their own building. Like, nobody's living off of that. Yes, it's part of their history and it gives them some confidence, but they know that it doesn't matter once the ball gets kicked off on Sunday.
You played baseball at the collegiate level.
I did.
Did you ever have a game, thinking back, and I don't know how good Lawrence was back then, but
we weren't very good.
Did you ever get off to a big lead, 5-6 run first inning?
Sure.
Like, what I was thinking about, I wasn't a part of the Love presser or scrum, but I was in some of the other stuff, and these topics come up about Dallas.
Yeah.
I think the lasting takeaway from that game, and honestly probably carried a little bit into this season, was when you talk about the importance of a fast start. Yeah, it's about building 5-6 runs, or it's about scoring 27 points against Dallas to get up. Dallas doesn't score in that game until literally the clock hits 0 in the first half.
Right.
Yes, it's important to have that fast start, but it's also the momentum that's derived from that. It's the confidence that's derived from that, and it's the way you can take the air out of the balloon in a road venue. This is going to be a much more hostile environment than AT&T Stadium. Credit to the Cowboys. It's a good place. It's an unbelievable venue for football. But Philly is different.
Yeah, it is.
It's walking into the ECW arena, with those fans, cheering and shouting at you. That same type of vibe is going to be at the Link. And for Green Bay, I feel like the lasting takeaway, you can't take anything from that. Nothing that you did in Dallas last year is going to help you on Sunday in terms of points that you put up on the board.
Yeah.
But the reminder of how you have to jump out on teams and the momentum you have to build in that first quarter, Packers have talked about it every single week of the season. Fast starts, how critical it is in every game, but especially for this football team, regardless of whether or not you take the football first, regardless of whether or not you get the ball first. That is, I think, one of the big lessons that Green Bay learned from that game over Dallas, and it is going to be absolutely critical to being able to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday.
Well, I do want to get to our keys to victory, but I will take care of some sponsor business first. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousins Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousins Subs, 50-plus years of better. All right, Wes, keys to victory. There are a lot of them. You've got to do a lot of things right to beat a 14-3 football team in their own building in the playoffs. What's at the top of the list for you?
I made an excellent point in Insider Inbox.
You always do.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But going back to the Saquon Barkley games, the end of the 23 season, which honestly, if you think back on it, that loss to the Giants, probably you're going to go down as one of the worst ones we've had in the LaFleur era. But
it's bad.
But the lessons that were learned that day, I think that was kind of in some ways the beginning of the run for Green Bay when they finally were able to start stringing these victories again at the end of the season. But you go back to that game, Green Bay defended Saquon Barkley so well. You go back to this opener in Brazil, they defended Saquon Barkley so well. And the point I was making with the Insider Inbox, Barb, was that 49 rushing yards on 18 first-half carries in those two games, 2.7 yards per carry. In the second half of those two games, 140 rushing yards on 26 attempts, 5.4 yards per carry. It's not even that the Packers' defense, they stopped defending the run well. No, this is the problem that Saquon Barkley presents. He is going to keep hammering on you until that door finally bashes in. Green Bay, to the best of its ability, cannot allow that door to fall. You have to be able to keep up that wave of momentum. Certainly you don't want him to get off to a fast start, but even if you get to halftime and he has 10 rushing yards, you have to treat it like he has 140. You have to treat it like you have to be able to stop this guy on every single down he touches the ball, because you're talking about all these different things that have to happen in this game for the Green Bay Packers to win. Number one is Saquon Barkley not running through this defense that has been historically solid against the run.
Yeah, this is the type of challenge when it's a running back like Barkley that is it becomes a different stop the run challenge, because when an offense has the best running back in the league and a guy who I believe this year he had 4 touchdown runs of 65 plus yards.
Yep.
The thing is, no matter how much the Packers stop him, the Eagles are going to keep feeding him the ball, because he is as much a big play home run threat as anything that Jalen Hurts can do with A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith or anybody else out there. So you can stop him for 2.5, 3, even 3.5 quarters all you want. He's going to keep getting the football, and they will make you stop him for all 4 quarters. Thinking back to the Dallas game last year, if the Packers are able to jump on top and build a lead, so maybe it's 13-0, 17-0, something like that, and you're getting close to the end of the first half, Saquon Barkley is going to keep getting the football, even if the score is 17-0, even if the score is 20-0, because he can bust a 70-yard touchdown run. He can take it to the house at any time. So the Eagles are going to keep pounding away like that. So the 4-quarter challenge that he presents in terms of stopping the run is really unlike anything I think the Packers have faced all year since week 1 in Brazil, when Barkley kept pounding away, all the way along to the very last possession.
And that was one of the few games where Green Bay allowed a carry of more than 30 yards this entire season. They still have not allowed a carry of 40 yards this season, which they have to be able to continue to come up with this victory. But I just, It's funny, man. Like 2 years ago, people were ready. I'm going into the 22 season. People were ready to sell the ship and sell the farm on Barkley. Too many injuries. They felt like, okay, maybe this is sort of a flash in the pan, what he did earlier in his career. He put the injuries behind him. He willed the Giants to the playoffs, and it didn't happen for them again in the second year. But this guy has always been the guy.
Yeah.
He has been since he entered the league. It's him. It's Josh Jacobs. It's been Derrick Henry for almost a decade now. I mean, like, it's just crazy that we even got to this point that people are talking about devaluing running backs and things like this. The Philadelphia Eagles have 900 more rushing yards than they did last season. I don't even think they've carried it that many more times.
Yeah.
But that's the Barkley effect. I mean, Jalen Hurts' stats, as far as running are concerned, are almost identical to last season. The difference is their lead back had twice as many rushing yards.
Yeah.
You have to be able to stop him.
Well, you mentioned the name Josh Jacobs, and I think that's a big one here for Green Bay as well, because regardless of what Jordan Love's health is going to be, his elbow, and obviously the Packers are going to need to stay balanced on offense. One way to do that, of course, is to not fall behind by multiple scores. Don't let the other team make you get into a one-dimensional type of game, because that's what Philadelphia will be wanting to do, and then they'll want that crazy crowd at the Link to be cranking it up on third downs, knowing the Packers have to throw all the time, et cetera, et cetera. Josh Jacobs is a huge key to that in terms of keeping the offense balanced, keeping the Eagles defense honest. And as you said, Wes, the keeping the defense honest thing sort of cuts both ways,
yep.
Right? The Packers can't just completely lean on Josh Jacobs. They're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to, work the ball horizontally as well as vertically, make the Eagles defend, absolutely as much physical territory as possible, and see what you can get done. And when I think back to week one and that game in Brazil that we watched on that Friday night, what the Packers absolutely cannot afford to do, which really cost him the game back in week one, is to stall out in the red zone.
Yep.
You've got to be able to finish drives, because the Packers did enough offensively in terms of moving the football and getting opportunities. They did enough to win that game offensively, but they didn't put the points up that they should have because they didn't finish enough drives. And that's going to be that much harder to do in a true road game against this defense, to be playing at the Link as opposed to be playing at a, quote unquote neutral field. But finishing drives is the other thing that's at the top of my list here, because if the Packers are settling for field goals, it's going to be very hard to put up enough points to outlast the Philadelphia Eagles.
And you also have to go, even think of like last week, without Jalen Hurts, they still beat the Giants 20-13, but you'd have to go all the way back to week 4 for the last time they scored fewer than 20 points.
Yeah.
This is one of the most high-octane, high-efficient offenses in the National Football League. And now you have Vic Fangio's defense complementing that. You have guys, when you look at Quinyon Mitchell coming in, when you look at, obviously, Cooper DeJean, what he has added is sort of a versatile piece in that secondary. The areas that it seemed like Philadelphia came up short last season, what sort of led to their fall during that final stretch of the year, they filled those holes on both sides of the ball. And it has allowed them to be a much more complete football team this season. The Green Bay Packers have to understand that, we are still the youngest team in the NFL. We were the youngest team in the NFL for the first time in back-to-back years. But we also are much more experienced than we are last year. You have that experience now of going down to Brazil, playing on that surface, playing that far away from home against an opponent of that caliber, and coming up short, but understanding where you came up short. Protecting the football, situational offense and defense. These are the keys, not only to winning in the National Football League, but lasting in the playoffs. You don't do those two things, you're going home. Yeah,
and this game isn't going to be won with any kind of, psychological tricks or anything like that, because what I'm sensing, and granted I'm not there, but paying attention to kind of what's out there in the media and the comments that are coming from Philadelphia, what I sense is that the Philadelphia Eagles, they are perfectly content with the fact that all the attention in the NFC for the last couple weeks was on the Vikings and the Lions and who was going to get the number 1 seed.
Absolutely.
They knew their quarterback was in concussion protocol, and there were certainly some concerns there. But now you head into this week, and they're absolutely fine with all the analysts talking about what the Packers did last year as a number 7 seed and went down to Dallas, the NFC East champs, and blew them out of their building and all that. The Philadelphia Eagles just strike me as a team that is they are lying in wait. They know, everybody knows how they completely collapsed at the end of last season, and there were all kinds of questions about where the franchise was headed. They've answered a lot of those questions, but this is a team that strikes me as one that is ready to answer a lot more. And the as I said before, I think the Packers mentally are in a really good space going out there to take on this challenge. But man, you have to be able to match every ounce of intensity that the Eagles are going to bring into this game, because this is a team that's out to prove something.
They're intense, they're physical, but I'll tell you something else though, Mike. You're right. They've answered a lot of those questions. But the real answer doesn't really matter until now.
That's right. You're right.
There was a thing that happened with Marty Schottenheimer for a lot of years, especially during his run with the Chargers, where they'd have these really good regular seasons and then they didn't get it done. Now, credit to the Eagles. They've made a Super Bowl. They've taken that next steps, more steps than a lot of teams make, but they still haven't brought back that Lombardi trophy since the Nick Foles year. So that part of it makes me think, yeah, you should be confident. You're a 14-win team. You answered the skeptics. You survived what was going to be a really tenuous first month of the season if you don't start fast.
Yeah.
And you're at this point, but yet you still need to win. And that's why I made the comment in Insider Inbox. I'm like, the pressure is still all with them. Green Bay can take as much pressure and they want to put that on their shoulders, that's fine. But realistically, they're in the same spot as last year as far as playing with house money. And that's why I'm really interested to watch this first half on Sunday afternoon. If you get off to a fast start, how do the Eagles respond? How does that fan base respond?
Right.
But you got to earn it to be able to see it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, 100%. Well, I do want to talk about the rest of Wild Card Weekend here in the NFL. We'll start in the NFC. The other 2 games, both of which will actually take place after the Packers play. Washington is at Tampa Bay in the Sunday night game, and then Minnesota is at the LA Rams in the Monday night game. As far as Washington and Tampa Bay, it's fascinating. I know I was having conversations with you about this, and then I did a little bit more research and posted it in my Road to the Super Bowl story that went up on the website on Tuesday afternoon. Washington enters the playoffs as a 12-5 team. Literally half of their wins, 6 of them, have come in either the last 5 seconds or literally the last play of the game. 6 of their 12 when you look at their season, including 4 in a row here down the stretch to get to 12-5, which got them the 6th seed and the trip to Tampa Bay. Absolutely fascinating in that regard, what that team has done in all these down to the wire games. And then Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield is as hot a quarterback as any in the league right now. Over his last, I believe, 4 games, he's got 120 plus passer rate essentially over the last month. Tampa Bay is a team that they don't have a great record. They won a crappy division, but that's a team that's confident they can go out and win games right now too.
The way that draft class has rallied too has just been incredible. I mean, Darnold obviously is in this playoff with Minnesota, but Baker Mayfield, man, when he is hot, there is nobody that strikes the match hotter than he does. I mean, when he catches fire, that guy is just an inferno. Yeah. And he's doing it again. I'm really interested to see him match up with Dan Quinn's defense and how they counter that. Quinn's defense have been up and down at various points of the season. It does seem like they've sort of peaked towards the end of the year, though. And certainly, when you talk about Jaden Daniels, you're talking about the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. I know it's going to be probably a couple days before we hear any of that, but that has to be what happened.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
this guy has been electrifying, but he's also been incredibly clutch as a rookie player in his first NFL season. You just that aspect of it you can't say enough about, because at the end of the day, you can have fancy stats and you can do this and that. Do you win football games? He wins football games.
Yeah.
I got a kick out of this. Did you see that stat? Not that this has anything to do with the games you lined up for me, but this is the 8th playoff trip for the Houston Texans, and they've never not been in the 3:30 time slot on Saturday.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Every single time.
Every Houston Texans AFC wild card game is at 3:30 Central on Saturday afternoon. Yeah, they've been in the same time slot every time.
The Houston Texans are like the ginger ale and like the combination box with like the cherry soda and the orange and then what ends up being left at the very end. And they keep throwing it into that same spot. Like, all right, well, this is a playoff game. We'll get it out of the way and then we'll move on with the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
But also the fact that the 3 AFC games are all happening before the NFC games.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of interesting how that fell.
Pittsburgh and Baltimore are playing for the 3rd time in 15 days or whatever it feels like at this point.
Yeah, that's right. It's third. Yeah,
it's been like 2 months, but I mean, like it's still crazy. Like those teams, it just seems like every time I turn on a television, they're playing each other.
Well, here, let me get your thoughts on the AFC games, and then we'll go back to Minnesota and LA.
Can you tell the ones that I can watch?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
actually really excited.
Yeah, the ones we're going to get to watch. So the Chargers are at the Texans, the Steelers are at the Ravens, and the Broncos are at the Bills. The vast majority of the football analyst world is going to pick the Chargers, the Ravens, and the Bills to win those 3 games. Overwhelmingly, that will be the sentiment. Yep. Do you have one of those 3 games that you would say, not to say you're going to predict the upset, but that you think would maybe have the best chance of going the other way?
I wonder if C.J. Stroud can catch something here.
Okay.
It's weird to say a team that's a 4 seed and is hosting a game is like the underdog, but I mean, like,
well, the way they played against the Ravens when they had them at home very recently, that was ugly.
But is it you know what I'm talking about though? Like
no, I got you. I mean, the guy was the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, and this is a guy who's capable of throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns at any time. Now the Chargers defense is one of the best in the league. That's going to be really big time challenge there. But yeah, you can't. Whenever you have a playmaker, especially a young playmaker who's gone through the ups and downs and everything, you can never count a guy like that out.
And in the other aspect, sometimes this stuff just doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like you will just be like, okay, well, the Chargers are rolling. Harbaugh's got these guys going well. And then just something happens where you remember, oh, yeah, this is the National Football League. Any of these teams can beat each other at any time. If the Chargers have all the pieces, they've gotten really banged up at receiver, but they have the pieces to be able to contest with that game. The other 2, I can't sit here and honestly tell you the Pittsburgh Steelers on the losing streak that they're on, going up against Lamar playing the way he's playing right now, the way that entire team is playing, that they're going to have a chance. And then ultimately, I'd be silly to be sitting here talking about how good Buffalo is all season and say, oh, yeah, Bo Nix is going to go in there and knock him out of the playoffs. Now, that would be demoralizing.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
But, I mean, when you look in terms of the overall consistency of a season, it's hard to find a team. Maybe... No, I don't even think you could say Detroit because Buffalo beat them in their own place. But maybe it's Detroit. But Buffalo has just from beginning, middle, and end has been the team that has just been the most consistent one throughout the course of this thing.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The one thing I will say, and then we'll move on, but the one thing I will say about Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and the reason it intrigues me, even though Pittsburgh is on this losing streak and they're not playing all that well, something about division games in the playoffs.
Yeah,
when it's the 3rd meeting, and as you said, this is the 3rd meeting in a very short period of time between these 2 teams. When it's division opponents that meet and they know each other so well, and one team is obviously Baltimore's kind of had Pittsburgh's number here this year. It's one of those things that I know everybody is writing the Steelers off, and yes, if gambling weren't illegal at Bushford, I would be putting money on the Baltimore Ravens to win this game. I absolutely 100% believe the Ravens will win in advance. I'm just very curious because it's a division matchup. It's a familiar opponent. It's the 3rd time in a short period of time. Maybe that gives Pittsburgh will find something here and make it a better game than a lot of people think it's going to be.
And I'm sure Mike Tomlin is telling his guys, we beat these guys. It was in our place, but we beat them. And Russell Wilson did not play well. But they still found a way.
And that's the other thing too about this one that intrigues me, because Mike Tomlin he's one of the best coaches in the league. He's going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday. And this is a guy who hasn't won a playoff game in quite a while.
Yeah.
I think you have to go back to 2016 or 2017, something like that for Mike Tomlin's last playoff win. Good coaches that are that good, they'll find a way to end a drought like that. And again, it's the thing that intrigues me about the Pittsburgh Baltimore matchup, and I'm really curious to see Tomlin can change the narrative.
Yeah, you have to go back to, I think it was 2016.
2016. Yeah, I knew it'd been a while. I think he's lost either six playoff games in a row or something.
One thing that's really unfair to him, though, that I mean, it is what it is. You're no one's crying for you in the NFL, but like there are some teams that he got there that probably shouldn't have been there.
Oh yeah, that's
and you get dogged for that.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the beauty of Mike Tomlin is he gets teams to the playoffs that nobody thinks would even have a chance to get there over the course of a long season, and they get into the playoffs. And yeah, in recent years they haven't been able to win any games, but I just wonder if he's going to be able to flip the script a little bit.
Yeah,
got to get your thoughts though. Minnesota at the Rams. I made the comment in Insider Inbox. We're talking a lot about the Packers' resiliency being tested, obviously. A tough loss against Minnesota, a big division opponent there. Then you don't play well at all against the Bears and you end up losing right at the end. Going into the playoffs on a 2-game losing streak, you got to hit the road. The Packers' resiliency is being tested big time here. I think Minnesota's resiliency is being tested just as much because of everything that went into. I mean, such a high-stakes Week 18 game. On the road. It's the difference between the 1 seed and the 5 seed, between getting a bye and playing at home in the divisional round to having to go on the road right away. And they're going up against a team that beat them earlier in the season in that building, and B, a Rams team where Sean McVay didn't care about the seed. He didn't care if he was the 3 or the 4. He felt it was better for his team to rest his guys, get ready, and try to have everybody as fresh as possible for whatever opponent would be coming into to SoFi Stadium. This is a big time challenge for Minnesota,
and it was a big time gamble. It was a big time risk by McVay.
Yep,
we're going to figure out whether or not it pays off because there's a number of ways to look at this thing. The probably the biggest one is, well, okay, you're picking your poison as far as who you're going to play, but do you just want to start to bite through that right at the beginning and start to get through that elephant, from day one? And if you beat the Minnesota Vikings, you take on the world, right? You just see where it takes you from there.
Yep.
So you had the half round bye or whatever you want to call this with sitting all the guys they did. And the other thing too, you'd be remiss not to say, the Rams have been banged up every way a team can be banged up, but still be in the playoffs with its core players. Like, it's insane. Like, the fact that San Francisco never got everybody back.
Right.
The Rams somehow did. Like, and they had bad injuries, especially at the receiver position.
And they were able to outlast the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
The Seahawks had a very tough schedule down the stretch. They lost home games back-to-back to the Packers and the Vikings. That put the Rams in control, and the Rams snagged that division and got their playoff spot. And then once they had it, Sean McVay was like, all right, then I don't care what seed we are. We're gonna rest up our guys and get ready to make a run.
And for how bad that defense was at certain points this season, the way they finished out against the division, finished out against Geno Smith, you saw what Geno did in the finale. I mean, like, that guy's he threw for a career-high passing yards this year. I think more touchdowns than he's ever had. I mean, like, the guy is a real threat that you have to find ways to get through. The Rams did that. Here's your reward. You get to face a 14-win wildcard team. But, seeing where this takes them is going to be really fascinating to watch, because as long as the Packers are alive, I want to see the fewest amount of NFC North teams available, the rest of the way. Not because I don't think they can beat them, because you don't want to sit there and play, division. You don't want to cheer for your division, whatever. But there is also the aspect in the back of my head that's like, Minnesota is such a strange team in the way in which they've done this thing this year. Nobody expected them to be here.
No.
I had them down for 4th place in the division.
So did I.
I had them behind the Chicago Bears. And here they are. Sam Darnold showing what he flashed with the 49ers was no fluke. And it's crazy, man, but this fountain of youth that has emerged out in Carolina, where these guys go down there and they kind of flame out, and then they go to another team and become Baker Mayfield again, and Darnold becomes the player that he's become. I mean, it's been crazy to watch. I think we won't be able to probably enjoy that game at all, but I think that's probably, I can see why that was the one that was put on Monday Night Football, because it is a real juggernaut of a matchup in terms of the wild card round and how that is formulated.
Yeah, it is 100%. And the whole Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell thing is interesting as well, obviously, as amongst the many coaching connections and all that we talked about over the years with the, I guess what you'd call the Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan tree.
Yeah, the double tree.
Yeah.
I want to mention this too when I say we can't really enjoy it on Monday night. And the reason I say that is for two reasons. One, if the Packers lose, I don't care about football anymore. And two, if the Packers win, correct me if I'm wrong here, you're playing on Saturday night, right? There's no situation in which Green Bay could even play the following Sunday, correct?
That's the part I don't know about anymore, because they haven't announced what time slot Detroit is in.
So you could potentially have both of them on Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind then.
Yeah, because see, here's the thing, like the way I understand it, like what the NFL is not going to do is the NFL is not going to have the Monday night winner between the Rams and the Vikings play on Saturday.
Right. Yes.
So, but you don't know which opponent the Rams or the Vikings winner is going to get until all the other games, until all the other games play out, and then you figure out who's going where. So there's more to sort out. Because what they used to do when there were the two byes, when there were the two byes per conference, they would actually, like when the Packers would have a bye as one of the top two seeds, we would actually know right now during the playoff bye what time slot the following weekend the Packers had. They had that all set up in advance. Now that they're playing a wild card game on a Monday night, they can't do that anymore because you can't have the Monday night winner play on Saturday. Yeah, like that's just not fair at all. So they have to wait for things to sort out before you know what the schedule is the following weekend.
And this is where I was coming from, is because in at least the best I know, there has never been a weekend where it's been the AFC both games on a Saturday, NFC both games on a Sunday. It's always NFC and AFC. So under that idea, let's say that is the truth, then the whoever wins with the Vikings and the Rams conceivably would play
Sunday. Yeah.
So
I hear what you're saying, but these days with the way the whole television part works, I honestly don't know.
Let's put a pin in this, and after the Packers win on Sunday, we can discuss it all over again.
We've gone quite a bit overtime. Apologies to our producer, Zach, and the regular listeners who count on us to be a little bit more short and concise. We weren't today, but I will finish with this, folks. Be among the thousands of football fans cheering on their team's NFL picks by joining us April 24th through April 26th of 2025 for the NFL Draft. Visit greenbay.com/draft25 for more information. And with that, we're going to call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of Sunday's NFC wildcard playoff game from Philadelphia. Wes and I will both be there. We'll have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next time.